Para hadirin dimohon untuk berdiri. Negaraku. Lafaz ikrar rukun negara. Bahawasanya negara kita Malaysia mendukung cita-cita hendak capai perpaduan yang lebih erat dalam kalangan seluruh masyarakatnya, memelihara satu cara hidup demokratik, mencipta satu masyarakat adil di mana kemakmuran negara akan dapat dinikmati bersama secara adil dan saksama, menjamin satu cara liberal terhadap tradisi-tradisi kebudayaannya yang kaya dan pelbagai corak, membina satu masyarakat progresif yang akan menggunakan sains dan teknologi moden. Ikrar. Maka kami, rakyat Malaysia, berikrar akan menumpukan seluruh tenaga dan usaha kami untuk mencapai cita-cita tersebut berdasarkan atas prinsip-prinsip yang berikut. Kepercayaan kepada Tuhan, kesetiaan kepada raja dan negara, keluhuran perlembagaan, kedaulatan undang-undang, kesopanan dan kesusilaan. Terima kasih. Para hadirin dipersilakan duduk. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam Malaysia Madani, salam kita Selangor. Majlis mengalu-alukan kehadiran Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Amirudin bin Shari, Datuk Menteri Besar Selangor. Yang Berhormat Datuk Salim bin Soib, Penasihat Undang-Undang Negeri Selangor. Yang amat dihormati Tan Sri Datuk Seri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, Pro Canselor Unisal. Yang berhormat Tuan Dr. Muhammad Fahminga, Exco Agama Islam dan Pembudayaan Inovasi. Yang berbahagia Profesor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Muhammad Redzuan bin Othman, Presiden dan Naib Canselor Unisal. Yang berhormat ahli-ahli Dewan Negeri Selangor, yang berusaha ketua-ketua jabatan negeri dan daerah, para pelaksana Sekretariat Dialog Shah Alam, tuan-tuan, puan-puan, serta seluruh hadirin dan hadirat sekalian. Bagi memberkati majlis pada pagi ini, majlis dengan ini menadah tangan, memohon inayah dan keberkatan untuk mengaminkan doa yang akan dipimpin Al-Fadhil Ustaz Zulkifli bin Abdul Rahman, Eksekutif Maqasid Institut Darul Ihsan. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Al-Fatihah. Amin amin ya rabbal alamin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, sesungguhnya kami berhimpun pada hari ini bagi menyatakan kesyukuran ke atas kurnia-Mu yang tidak ternilai. Jadikanlah kami hamba-hamba-Mu yang sentiasa bersyukur atas segala nikmat yang telah Engkau berikan kepada kami. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Engkau berkatilah dan rahmatilah perjalanan majlis Dialog Shah Alam yang kami adakan pada hari ini. Sesungguhnya Engkau Maha mengetahui bahawa kami di sini ingin menimba ilmu yang luas untuk kami manfaatkan dalam kehidupan kami. Oleh itu, berkati dan rahmatilah majlis kami yang kami anjurkan pada hari ini. Ya Karim, Ya Wadud, Ya Dzal Jalali wal Ikram, Rabbi shrah lana sudurana wa yassir lana umurana wahlul 'uqdatam min lisanina. Ya Allah, lapangkanlah dada kami, lapangkanlah dada kami untuk menerima ilmu, mudahkanlah segala urusan kami, lancarkanlah lisan-lisan kami, dan bimbingkanlah kami kepada jalan yang Engkau redai. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Amin amin ya rabbal alamin. Majlis mengucapkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan dan terima kasih kepada Al-Fadhil Ustaz Zulkifli atas bacaan doa itu tadi. Semoga majlis kita pada hari ini dilimpahi dengan rahmat dan keberkatan. Pertamanya syukur kepada Allah Subhanahu wa taala atas limpah dan rahmatnya dapat kita bersama-sama hadir ke majlis Dialog Shah Alam. Majlis mengucapkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan dan mengalu-alukan kehadiran Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Amirudin Shari, Datuk Menteri Besar Selangor, ke majlis yang sangat bermakna dan bersejarah pada pagi ini. Majlis juga mengucapkan selamat datang dan penghargaan kepada pemidato utama kita, Yang Amat Dihormati Tan Sri Pro Chancellor Unisal, serta kepada semua para tetamu kehormat dan jemputan, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan serta hadirin ke program yang diadakan pada hari ini. Hadirin dan hadirat sekalian, majlis pada pagi ini akan diteruskan dengan ucapan aluan daripada Yang Berbahagia Datuk Presiden dan Naib Canselor Unisal. Namun sebelum itu, dengan penuh sukacita, majlis ingin merakamkan ucapan tahniah kepada Yang Berbahagia Dato' atas penganugerahan gelaran Profesor Emeritus dalam bidang sejarah dan politik Timur Tengah sempena Istiadat Convocation Universiti Melaya ke-64 yang telah berlangsung baru-baru ini. Oleh itu, majlis dengan ini dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan Yang Berbahagia Profesor Emeritus Dato' Dr. Muhammad Redzuan bin Othman, Presiden dan Naib Canselor Unisal, untuk menyampaikan ucapan alu-aluan. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala syafi'il anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in. Saudara Hafiz selaku pengacara majlis pada pagi ini, Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Amirudin bin Shari, Datuk Menteri Besar Selangor. Yang berhormat Dr. Fahmingah, Esko Agama, Islam dan Pembudayaan Inovasi. Yang berhormat Datuk Salim bin Soib, Penasihat Undang Negeri Selangor, merangkap ahli lembaga pengarah Universiti dan Berhad. Yang amat dihormati Tan Sri Datuk Seri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, Pro Canselor Universiti Selangor, mantan Gubernur Bank Negara. Yang amat berhormat Ahli Majlis Mesyuarat Kerajaan Negeri Selangor, yang berhormat ahli-ahli Dewan Negeri Selangor, yang berusaha ketua-ketua jabatan negeri dan daerah, tuan-tuan, puan-puan serta para mahasiswa yang dihormati sekalian, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, salam sejahtera dan salam Malaysia Madani. Alhamdulillah, setinggi-tinggi kesyukuran kepada Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala kerana dengan limpah rahmat dan keizinannya kita dapat bersama-sama berkumpul dalam Dewan Pro Chancellor Universiti Selangor Unisel, kampus Shah Alam sempena dengan program Dialog Shah Alam bertajuk Transformasi Ekonomi Malaysia, Perspektif, Terhadap Globalisasi dan Perkembangan Geopolitik dalam Perdagangan, Pekerjaan dan Pendidikan, yang dianjurkan secara bersama oleh Pejabat Menteri Besar Selangor dengan kerjasama Selangor Research Centre Seri, Universiti Selangor Unisel dan Institut Darul Ihsan IDE. Pertamanya saya mengambil kesempatan di sini untuk mengalu-alukan kehadiran Tan Sri, Datuk-datuk, tuan-tuan, puan-puan ke Universiti Selangor Kampus Shah Alam. Untuk makluman tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, kampus ini merupakan kampus bandar ataupun city campus, manakala kampus induk Unisel terletak di Bestari Jaya, di kawasan yang keluasannya sekitar 1,000 ekar dan mempunyai fasiliti yang lengkap sebagai sebuah universiti. Pada kesempatan ini, saya ingin mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Amirudin Shari, Datuk Menteri Besar Selangor, merangkap pengurusi lembaga pengarah Universiti dan Berhad kerana sudi hadir bagi merasmikan program Dialog Shah Alam pada pagi ini. Saya dipahamkan bahawa beliau baru saja sampai dari negeri China awal pagi tadi. Kita berikan tepukan gemuruh kepada Datuk Seri. Ucapan terima kasih juga saya tujukan khas kepada Yang Amat Dihormati Tan Sri Datuk Seri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, Pro Chancellor Unisel yang juga merupakan mantan Gubernur Bank Negara, kerana sudi menyampaikan syarahan pada kali ini untuk dimanfaatkan oleh kita semua. Terima kasih juga saya ucapkan kepada Pejabat Menteri Besar, Selangor Research Centre, Institut Darul Ihsan, staf Unisel dan semua yang terlibat dalam menjayakan program Dialog Shah Alam pada hari ini. Tanpa sokongan dan bantuan daripada semua, tidak mungkin program yang besar impaknya ini dapat dilaksanakan dengan jayanya. Tan Sri, Datuk-datuk, tuan-tuan, puan-puan, para hadirin yang dihormati sekalian. Program Dialog Shah Alam pada hari ini sebenarnya adalah cetusan idea Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Menteri Besar yang disampaikan kepada saya ketika istiadat convocation Unisel kali ke-8 pada bulan September yang lalu. Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri mencadangkan supaya Unisel menghidupkan kembali Dialog Shah Alam yang diadakan di Unisel sebagai dialog, kesinambungan dialog yang pernah diadakan pada tahun 2019. Sebelum tertangguh berikutan pandemik COVID-19. Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri juga bersetuju supaya Yang Amat Dihormati Tan Sri Datuk Seri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, Pro Chancellor Unisel, sebagai pembicaranya. Alhamdulillah, dengan kerjasama dan komitmen semua pihak serta persetujuan dari Tan Sri Pro Chancellor, idea ini dapat direalisasikan pada pagi ini. Dialog pada hari ini merupakan sebahagian daripada proses bagi membolehkan tradisi intelektual berkembang mekar di Unisel dan negeri Selangor secara keseluruhannya. Unisel juga menggalakkan beberapa kegiatan yang bersifat intelektual seperti syarahan Siddiq Fadil dan dalam masa yang sama sedang mengembangkan pemikiran Siddiq Fadil terutama dalam perkara-perkara berkaitan dengan Melayu dan Islam. Program pada hari ini juga merupakan kesinambungan kepada program-program keilmuan lain seperti yang telah dilaksanakan di universiti ini. Ini termasuklah syarahan Darul Ihsan, syarahan perdana, syarahan profesor, syarahan umum, syarahan budiman dan sebagainya yang bukan saja untuk dimanfaatkan oleh warga UNISEL tetapi juga kepada masyarakat umum. Baru-baru ini, UNISEL telah diberi kepercayaan untuk bersama-sama menjayakan konvensyen mahasiswa Selangor di Timur Tengah di Kairah, Mesir. Alhamdulillah, konvensyen ini telah berjaya dilaksanakan dengan cemerlang. Terima kasih kepada Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Menteri Besar kerana memberikan kepercayaan kepada UNISEL untuk bersama-sama menggerakkan usaha memertabatkan bidang keilmuan di dalam dan juga di luar negara. Hadirin yang dihormati, dalam kesempatan yang terbatas ini, saya juga ingin memaklumkan bahawa UNISEL baru-baru ini baru saja mendapat pengiktirafan dan telah dimasukkan secara rasmi di dalam rangkaian Universiti Teknikal Malaysia ataupun MTUN bersama-sama 5 buah universiti lain, iaitu Universiti Teknikal Malaysia Melaka (UTM), Universiti Tun Hussein On (UTHM), Universiti Malaysia Perlis (UNIMAP), Universiti Malaysia Pahang (UMSA) dan Universiti Kuala Lumpur. Majlis Memorandum of Understanding MOU bersama-sama MTUN telah diadakan semalam di Universiti Teknikal Malaysia Melaka yang disaksikan oleh Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, Timbalan Perdana Menteri dan juga merupakan pengurusi jawatan TVET negara, dan Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir, Menteri Pendidikan Malaysia. Semoga dengan pengiktirafan ini, UNISEL akan terus bercemerlang dan berdaya saing pada masa-masa akan datang. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang dihormati, akhir kata, saya sekali lagi mengambil kesempatan ini untuk mengucapkan terima kasih dan penghargaan kepada semua yang terlibat dalam menjayakan dialog Shah Alam pada hari ini. Khususnya kepada Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Amirudin Shari, Yang Amat Dihormati Tan Sri Datuk Seri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, Pejabat Menteri Besar Selangor Research Center, Institut Darul Ihsan, staf UNISEL dan semua yang terlibat bagi menjayakan program pada hari ini. Diharap usaha yang kita semua lakukan ini akan mampu menaikkan lagi imej negeri Selangor, bukan sahaja sebagai sebuah negeri yang berpendapatan tinggi, tetapi juga mempunyai nilai intelektual yang boleh dibanggakan. Sebagai program yang bersifat intelektual, UNISEL Datuk Seri sentiasa bersedia memberikan sumbangan dan berperanan bagi membolehkan dialog Shah Alam dianjurkan secara berterusan pada masa-masa akan datang, insya-Allah. Saya akhiri dengan wabillahi taufiq. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Majlis mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada yang berbahagia Dato' Presiden dan Naib Canselor UNISEL atas ucapan aluan itu tadi. Hadirin dan hadirat sekalian, majlis pada pagi ini diteruskan dengan mempersilakan Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Amirudin Shari, Datuk Menteri Besar Selangor, untuk menyampaikan ucapan perasmian dialog Shah Alam seterusnya, memperkenalkan biodata Tan Sri Pro Canselor UNISEL dan mempersilakan syarahan pertanda. Dengan sepenuh ta'zimnya, mempersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, selamat tengah hari dan juga salam Malaysia Madani. Terima kasih pengacara majlis Yang Berhormat Dr. Fahmingah, Esko Agama Islam dan Pembudayaan Inovasi, Yang Berhormat Datuk Salim bin Soeb, Penasihat Undang-Undang Negeri, Yang amat dihormati Tan Sri Datuk Sri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, Pro Chancellor Universiti Selangor, yang juga merupakan pembicara utama malam ini, hari ini, yang juga merupakan mantan Gubernur Bank Negara Malaysia, Yang berhormat ahli-ahli Dewan Negeri dan ahli Parlimen, yang berusaha ketua-ketua jabatan, dan sudah pasti tidak ketinggalan yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Emeritus Datuk Dr. Redzuan Othman. Tahniah di atas anugerah yang baru diperolehi beliau dalam bidang sejarah dan politik Timur Tengah. Pensyarah-pensyarah universiti, pengkaji-pengkaji awam, badan-badan pengkajian serta penyelidik, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang saya kasih sekalian. Alhamdulillah, saya rakamkan rasa syukur kehadirat ilahi. Hari ini kita dapat melanjutkan program yang telah kita mulakan beberapa tahun yang lepas, iaitu pada tahun 2019. Program yang kita namakan sebagai program Dialog Shah Alam. Dan Dialog Shah Alam ini merupakan salah satu daripada semangat yang kita lontarkan pada tahun-tahun tersebut. Maklumlah, tahun tersebut baru saya laksanakan ataupun saya umumkan beberapa dasar baru. Antara dasar-dasar tersebut ialah dasar-dasar klasterisasi ekonomi yang kemudian berkembang menjadi salah satu daripada rancangan Selangor pertama. Dan antara perkara yang sangat konsisten saya sebutkan di dalam negeri ini, baik dalam ucapan utama seperti belanjawan, pembentangan rancangan kerja, maupun dalam ucapan perasmian dan ucapan program-program yang kita aturkan. Negeri Selangor harus membangun dan berkembang dengan asas keilmuan. Dan juga paksinya adalah pendidikan. Ada sebahagian negeri dan kawasan ataupun wilayah di negara kita yang mendirikan negara dan negeri ataupun paksi ekonominya berasaskan kepada pelaburan. Ada yang berasaskan pelaburan FDI. Ada yang membawa berdasarkan sektor pertanian dan juga pengembangan pekerja dan juga pelaburan-pelaburan yang bernilai tinggi. Dan Selangor telah mengecapi hal tersebut semenjak daripada tahun awal 90-an sehinggalah kita dihempas dengan beberapa krisis dan sebagainya. Namun dalam beberapa pengalaman-pengalaman yang lepas, apabila saya turun bertemu dengan pelabur, apabila saya berbincang dengan beberapa pengusaha dalam negara dan negeri kita dan juga di luar negara, masalah utama yang lahir kembali adalah adakah kita mempunyai sumber manusia yang bertepatan dengan asas pembangunan pelaburan tersebut. Justru saya sebutkan bahawa pendidikan harus menjadi asas baru yang sewajarnya menjadi base yang penting kepada negeri kita untuk kita bertahan dengan lebih lestari, untuk menjadi antara penyumbang ekonomi terbesar dan kekal sebagai gedung ekonomi terbesar. Lantaran daripada itulah lahirnya program seperti Dialog Shah Alam, lahirnya aktiviti yang rancak dalam program penterjemahan, lahirnya program dialog. Dan hari ini kalau kita lihat 3 entiti yang bekerjasama melahirkan program ini, baik namanya Unisel, baik yang namanya Seri, baik yang namanya adalah IDE, Institut Darul Ihsan yang ditubuhkan 8-9 tahun yang lepas, menggambarkan satu fokus dan juga inisiatif yang cuba meratakan keilmuan dalam pelbagai cara dan kaedah. Unisel sebagai sebuah universiti, ada disiplinnya, ada kaedahnya, ada caranya yang cukup formal, kena mematuhi MQA agar masuk dalam ranking dan menurut kepada peraturan-peraturan universiti. IDE yang telah lama membantu negeri dalam bentuk yang agak bebas, merupakan satu badan bebas yang attach dengan kerajaan negeri, mengeluarkan pandangan-pandangan, menganjurkan forum, menganjurkan majlis kebudayaan dan pelbagai lagi program termasuk menerbitkan buku, menggerakkan kempen maqasid pada satu ketika dahulu dan banyak perkara-perkara yang lain. Dan saya pula menubuhkan Seri sebab saya rasakan di bawah negeri harus ada satu badan yang formal selain daripada Unisel, selain attachment longgar dengan IDE, supaya Seri dapat menumpu kepada dasar-dasar kerajaan, sama ada yang rinci, yang kecil, daripada dasar adaptasi iklim sampailah dasar kitar semula, dasar ekonomi kitaran, dasar ekonomi penjagaan dan banyak perkara yang kita nak kembangkan. Dan IDE boleh terus menjadi badan bebas di luar yang juga attach dengan kerajaan negeri melalui beberapa kaedah, tetapi mempunyai kebebasan yang tersendiri. Jadi secara bebas IDE boleh mengkritik kerajaan negeri dalam apa pun. Seri juga boleh mengkritik tapi di dalam ruangan yang lebih terkecil. Manakala Unisel boleh menterjemahkannya dan menggariskannya dalam bidang-bidang keilmuan untuk dikaji dan dirangka dengan besar, dan gabungan inilah merupakan gabungan yang sangat baik untuk kita melahirkan satu dialog Shah Alam, yang dialog ini kemudian menjadi satu engagement di pelbagai latar. Seri, satu kajian formal, IDE, satu kajian bebas di luar yang attach dengan public, dengan NGO, dengan individu, dengan masyarakat, hinggalah universiti yang duduk mengkaji dengan teliti dengan kaedah ilmu yang tersendiri. Engagement inilah yang sebenarnya lahir dalam tamadun yang besar, dalam tamadun yang bertahan dengan lama, dan Selangor bercita-cita untuk kekal dalam situasi sekarang, bukan hanya dengan berdasarkan investment yang datang, tetapi bagaimana investment itu difahami dan juga ia mampu untuk mengukuhkan fungsi negeri, rakyat dan warga dalam negara dan negeri kita. Saya memang agak terpengaruh dengan fungsi intelektual awam semasa zaman muda, melihat bagaimana fungsi intelektual awam yang tidak mempunyai disiplin ilmu sebagaimana akademia, tetapi terlibat dalam barang yang pemikiran dan engagement di antara public intelektual dengan intelijensia ataupun akademia. Kalau ikut tafsiran Syekh Hussein Alatas sebagai contoh, akan melahirkan satu pemikiran dan juga pengembangan ilmu yang kukuh di dalam komuniti dan masyarakat kita. Saya ambil contoh, saya baru pulang sebenarnya daripada wilayah Suco. Suco adalah satu tempat yang sangat terkenal sebagai perkampungan nelayan sebelum daripada tahun 1994. Suco adalah kawasan yang hanya didiami oleh 1,200 orang. Besar wilayahnya adalah 1/3 daripada Singapura. Tapi Suco pada hari ini merupakan bandar perindustrian teknologi, mempunyai institut nanoteknologinya, mempunyai institut AI-nya, mempunyai institut-institut pelbagai, dan ada lebih daripada 38 universiti dalam wilayah tersebut. Dan menariknya, ia dibangunkan bukan dengan hanya bermula pelaburan Singapura dan China sebagai G2G, tapi asasnya dibinakan dengan sebuah institut yang melahirkan pemikir-pemikir, intelektual, pengkaji-pengkaji dalam bidangnya. Saya datang di pusat nanoteknologinya. Apa yang menyokong satu teknologinya bukan dapatan akhir, tetapi mereka mempunyai lebih 100 pengkaji-pengkaji tegar dalam pelbagai bidang, PhD holder yang mengkaji dan melahirkan bahan-bahan ataupun kajian-kajian nanoteknologi yang kemudian disepadankan untuk pembentukan teknologi baru dan dipasarkan dan menjadi pemegang IP yang besar di negara China. Daripada kawasan yang dikenali sebagai pengeluar hairy crab. Memang enak hairy crab, saya pun nikmati di sana. Sebelum tu saya dah nikmati di sini. Kekal hairy crab, tetapi dalam masa yang sama berkembang menjadi pusat teknologi, dan Suco merupakan tempat kelahiran intelektual yang besar. Suco. Kalau tengok Sun Tzu Art of War, daripada Suco lah. Confucius juga dikatakan lahir daripada wilayah provins yang lebih besar. Ada provins yang lebih besar, saya lupa namanya. Suco merupakan satu daerah daripada wilayah tersebut, dan ia dipilih pada tahun 1994 adalah berdasarkan elemen-elemen tersebut. Dan hari ini kita berdepan dengan situasi yang lebih rumit. Rumitnya bukan hanya melibatkan institusi pemikiran, pengkajian sains, teknologi dan matematik yang agak lemah dalam negara kita, tetapi persoalan sekeliling yang merangkum dengan lebih luas. Kita gembira apabila Profesor Dato Dr. Redzuan Othman diangkat menjadi Profesor Emeritus dalam bidangnya. Tak ramai orang yang memahami latar belakang Timur Tengah sebagaimana kepakaran Dr. Redzuan Othman. Saya masih ingat apabila berlaku kebangkitan di Timur Tengah, beliau antara tokoh utama yang dipanggil Awani, dan saya ikuti dapatan-dapatan tersebut. Dan saya dah sebut banyak kali juga, Prof kena bangkitkan kepakaran itu untuk dikembangkan kepada masyarakat. Mungkin dialog Shah Alam kedua, ketiga, keempat aja ni pembicaranya Redzuan Othman pula untuk bicara pasal Timur Tengah dan juga perkembangannya. Tapi hari ini Kita nak melihat satu kerangka yang lebih besar, bagaimana nak memposisikan negara kita dan kedudukan kita. Di saat hiruk pikuk geopolitik, Trump 2.0, awal-awal lagi sudah nak mengenakan tarif 100% kepada barangan China. Kejadian di Timur Tengah yang tidak berkesudahan. Beberapa hari lepas berlaku undang-undang darurat di Korea Selatan. China dan Taiwan masih lagi belum selesai, termasuk dengan rangkaian di kawasan Asia Tenggara yang juga mendapat kesan. India terus bertapak di samping di dalam negara mereka, berlaku pertembungan clash of civilization di antara Hindu dan Islam walaupun cuba didamaikan dalam pelbagai perkara. Indonesia yang satu ketika dahulu merupakan serf to Malaysia, dengan izin maafkan saya kalau agak menghina, tetapi pada hari ini telah termasuk dan menganjurkan G20 event ataupun pertemuan summit dalam masa beberapa tahun, dan Jokowi telah membawa Indonesia ke tapak yang berbeza. Dan kita memerlukan pandangan yang lebih telus dan pandangan yang lebih jujur. Dan tokoh yang kita bawa pada hari ini bukan calang-calang, Tan Sri, Dato Sri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, yang begitu lama terlibat dalam bidang keuangan, akhirnya diangkat di Central Bank sebagai Gubernur di saat tahun 2016 dan 2018. Pada waktu itu saya kira satu negara dan seluruh dunia hari ini matanya terlihat kepada skandal yang paling besar di abad ini, yang saya percaya mempunyai pengalaman yang besar, and peranan Central Bank is very crucial pada ketika itu. Bagaimana transaksinya bukan transaksi di bawah bantal ataupun di bawah meja, tapi di counter bank di counter bank. Dan hari ini timbul pelbagai cerita yang tidak ada kesudahan, mungkin boleh dibukukan dan boleh dirakamkan. Dan ini penting untuk posisi kita, posisi di saat dunia yang berterabur, dunia yang sedang keliru, dunia yang sedang tidak tentu arah. PMX sebut sebagai post normal. Ambil daripada Zainuddin Sadar. Saya boleh terima pandangan-pandangan tersebut, tapi ada pandangan-pandangan yang lain yang boleh kita lihat. Tetapi maknanya kita tidak lagi duduk dalam dunia yang ada satu kuasa, sudah multipolar, sudah bertembung. Adakah multipolar ini akan encourage perang? Kalau perang, bagaimana posisi kita? Adakah ini akan berterusan? Bagaimana? China pula mengumumkan tidak lagi akan sekat lagi barangan Amerika, tapi bila datang dengan orang-orang China di bawah, mereka kata jangan percaya, itu hanya kata-kata mereka. Jadi ini satu kefahaman yang bukan hanya boleh difahami kepada orang di Central Bank ataupun mereka dalam institusi keuangan ataupun dalam bidang financing ataupun dalam bidang ekonomi sahaja, tetapi kesedaran, at least kesedaran asas perlu sampai kepada rakyat. Dan saya percaya dialog seperti inilah yang akan membawa kita untuk menterjemah kepada masyarakat dan rakyat supaya lebih faham dan mengerti tindak tanduk kerajaan. Contohnya kerajaan menyusun balik subsidi, contoh bukan mudah. Di saat hari ini dunia yang bergelora, yang paling mudah untuk mencapai dan menggapai sesuatu kenikmat, sesuatu benda itu adalah dengan populis action, dengan tindakan-tindakan populis sebagai contoh. Tindakan populis, Selangor buat tak? Selangor buat. Tetapi adakah kita buat dengan sewenang-wenangnya tanpa ada kawalan? Kita buat dengan kawalan. Opposition, dia tak ada benda lain, dia hanya repeat benda populis. Rasmi kalau mereka jadi kerajaan pun, mereka akan buat juga benda-benda as a kebertanggungjawaban sebagai yang dipanggil sebagai fiscal responsibility ataupun tindakan fiskal dan sebagainya. Justru pada hari ini saya percaya tokoh yang kita panggil hari ini mendapat pendidikan dalam pelbagai latar. Sama ada daripada sudut keuangan daripada Universiti Islam, belajar tentang pentadbiran awam daripada Harvard University, dan juga merupakan accountant bertauliah daripada Institut Accountant Malaysia, fellow chartered banker Institut Bank Berkanun Asia, yang mana bidang keuangan, financial dan juga keuangan ini merupakan antara perkara yang ditekuni beliau. Dan melihat susul keuangan ini, Central Bank bukan hanya berfungsi sebagai pemegang buku kira-kira ataupun bookkeeper kepada negara, tetapi juga kena memahami senario keseluruhan Contohnya, macam mana kita nak posisi diri kita dalam BRICS di saat rakan dagang Amerika merupakan rakan dagang terbesar dan juga tidak ketinggalan China growing sebagai market utama kita sejak 15-20 tahun yang lepas. Ini perkara-perkara yang perlu disedari dan saya percaya Datuk Tan Sri, Datuk Seri Mohammad bin Ibrahim merupakan tokoh yang wajar untuk kita dengarkan pandangannya. Bukan hanya duduk sebagai pelaku dasar di Central Bank, bila terlibat dalam pelbagai institusi seperti Petronas dan juga pelbagai anak-anak syarikat yang lain ataupun institusi yang lain, badan berkanun yang lain seperti Suruhanjaya Security Malaysia. Dan ini semua terlibat hingga kepada pelaksanaan program dasar, penciptaan dasar sampailah kepada melihat secara asas kepada permukaan kita pada hari ini. Tanpa membuang masa, saya persilakan Tan Sri Datuk Seri Mohammad bin Ibrahim, Pro-Chancellor Unisel untuk menyampaikan syarahan. Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Datuk Menteri Besar dah cover 90% dari syarahan saya. Tuan-tuan Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Menteri Besar Selangor Amirudin Shari, yang berbahagia Profesor Emeritus Redzuan, congratulations on your confirmation as a Professor Emeritus. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang saya kasihi sekalian, pada hari ini saya akan memberi beberapa topik mengenai perdagangan, employment dan juga education. Some of the remarks that I will do will be quite controversial, but that's the whole idea of having a debate, so that we provoke our thinking. Benarkan saya untuk bertutur dalam bahasa Inggeris. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic today is very broad. I will speak on the three topics relating to globalization, geopolitical development, and its impact on trade, employment, and education. Before the conclusion, I will include my views on policy issues that the Selangor State should consider. Datuk Menteri Besar. Let me summarize at the outset some of the issues of globalization and geopolitical development. What are the latest developments that we have seen recently? It revealed a very complex, interconnected, and rapidly changing global landscape in 2024 and beyond. Several key trends and events are shaping our international arena. First, re-globalization and economic shift. The concept of re-globalization is emerging as a response to recent global challenges. These involve integrating previously excluded economies and regions into the global supply chain, offering a pathway for more equitable growth around the globe. Countries like Mexico, Vietnam, Cambodia, and others are benefiting from this expanding global value chain participation. For instance, the share of chain trade in global trade rose from 44% in 2020 to 49% in 2022, indicating a trend towards diversification and resilience. However, this process is not without challenges. Economic fragmentation along geopolitical lines will reduce long-term global GDP by around 5%. The world economy remains deeply interconnected, but economic ties are being reconfigured along geopolitical and regional lines. There's a trend towards de-risking global supply chain, with government promoting greater domestic production of critical products. Some of this de-risking is also driven by political sentiment. Geopolitical tension will continue to shape the global economic and financial landscape. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, and Yemen represent the most active conflict since World War II. Russia's global presence have increased significantly, primarily due to military action in Ukraine. The Middle East conflict has constricted a key checkpoint for global trade. This development will impact trade patterns way into the future. If you look at the technological competition, the race for technological supremacy, particularly in artificial intelligence, is becoming a central dynamic in international relations. Governments are simultaneously trying to regulate AI to reduce societal risks while fostering domestic AI innovation to compete geopolitically. The geopolitics of AI is accelerating the shift towards distinct geopolitical blocks. The AI revolution will impact every aspect of our everyday lives. It will also change nation competitiveness. On climate change and environmental concern, is increasingly recognized as a near-term risk rather than just a medium-term hazard. In 2023 was the hottest year on record, with a series of drought, flood, wildfires, making the impact of climate change more visible. Climate-related events are affecting global trade, as evidenced by the reduced ship traffic through the Panama Canal due to drought. Let's look at the global economic outlook. The global economic landscape is characterized by weak economic growth forecasts, with the World Bank predicting a global growth to slow down to 3.2% in 2024 and going into 2025 as well. China economic slowdown, which is expected to impact many advanced and developing countries that depend on trade with China, surging financial stress and trade fragmentation as major risks to global economy. The IMF also forecasts regional and sectoral shift. We are indeed in the crossroad of change throughout the globe. 2024 is also marked by a global election supercycle. Over 4 billion people went to the polls in more than 70 countries, including major actors like the US, the EU, India, and Indonesia. This election could significantly impact international relationships, economic policies, and the global business environment. As the Dato Menteri Besar says that Trump 2.0 will bring in radical ideas on trade and economy. But at the same time, there's a shift in global power dynamics, an ongoing global power dynamics that is changing before our very eyes. The global presence of countries in the global south has grown, while that of the global north has stagnated or declined. However, the gap still remains between this grouping, comparable to that of mid-1990s. This development highlights a world in transition, grappling with the challenges of maintaining global interconnectedness while addressing national security concerns, technological advancement, and environmental imperative. The outcome of the 2024 and the resolution of ongoing conflict will likely play a crucial role in shaping the future trajectory of globalization and geopolitical relations. Let me touch a bit on one issue that is unfolding right in front of our eyes, the emerging trend of de-dollarization. What are the key drivers of de-dollarization? One is geopolitical tension. The use of dollar-based sanctions by the United States has prompted some countries to seek alternatives to reduce their vulnerability. The weaponization of the US dollar, the exclusion on the use of SWIFT, and seizing of sovereign assets created strong pushback by many countries. The freezing of Russian assets following the invasion of Ukraine has accelerated this trend, and many countries around the globe take notice. Economic diversification. Countries are looking to reduce their exposure to the US, monetary policy, and economic fluctuation by diversifying their holdings. And one thing about the US is that when I deal with them during my tenure with the central bank, is that as far as the US is concerned, their monetary policy is for their own domestic interests. The rest have just to adjust to it. So that's how powerful the US is now. On economic diversification, countries are looking to reduce their exposure to the US monetary policy and economic fluctuation by diversifying their currency holding. And that's also the rise of alternative currencies. The euro, the yuan, and other currencies are gaining prominence in international trade and finance, challenging the dollar dominance. But bilateral swap arrangement become an important tool as an alternative to the USD. It's very interesting for us to see whether BRICS will come up with some sort like a currency for the bloc. Now, what is happening around the world? And there will be pushback, there will be retaliation by many countries. For example, BRICS Plus initiative, BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and their new members are actively pursuing de-dollarization strategies. They aim to reduce the use of the US dollar in cross-border transactions, increase the use of local currencies in trade. This is not something that is new. At the central bank, way back in mid-2000, we already have a bilateral swap arrangement with China and a few other countries around the region. The central bank reserve is very obvious. There's a decline in dollar share of global foreign exchange reserve. Central bank are increasingly diversifying their holdings, with some adding gold to their reserve. And then there's the trade arrangement. Several bilateral trade arrangements are being established to facilitate trade in local currencies bypassing the dollar. Example include agreement between India or Russia, Brazil and China, France and China. So what are the implications of these challenges of de-dollarization? The global financial system, de-dollarization could reshape the hierarchy between currencies and potentially introduce market volatility and instability. De-dollarization could lead to but on the other hand, de-dollarization could lead to a more stable international financial system. What is the impact on the US economy? The significant shift away from the dollar could impact US borrowing costs and the value of US financial assets. Portfolio managers would relocate their asset and diversify into non-traditional market. And then, what will be the impact on the emerging market? While de-dollarization offers potential benefit like reduced vulnerability to US monetary policy, it also presents challenges such as increased exchange rate volatility. This will require innovative instruments to hedge against uncertainty. I mentioned about the backlash against globalization, but there's also another concept called globalization recreated. If you look at the recent phenomena in some developed economies, it has shown pushback against globalization because globalization doesn't work for them anymore like it used to be. There has been a notable shift in sentiment and policy towards a more cautious approach, global economic integration. In a few countries, political sentiment has turned nationalistic in approach. This trend, often referred to as globalization backlash, is driven by interplay of economic, political, and social factors. Let's look at the economic factors. One is the job displacement and wage stagnation. One of the primary concerns in developed markets is the perceived negative impact of globalization on domestic employment and wages. This sentiment is often played out in the political arena. The rapid growth of imports from countries like China has led to job losses in certain sectors, particularly in manufacturing. This has contributed to economic insecurity and wage stagnation for some workers in the developed world. And then there's the income inequality. Globalization has been associated with rising income inequality in many developed nations. While the overall economic benefit of trade are widely acknowledged, those distribution has been uneven, with some segment of the population feeling left behind. From political and security concern, national security, there is a growing concern about the strategic implication of economic interdependence, particularly with regard to critical industries and technologies. This has led to increased scrutiny of foreign investment and trade relationship, especially with countries perceived as strategic rivals. That is the background of why there's a few sanctions against China on semiconductors. In many of these issues, national security is being used as a camouflage to prevent market access, stifle competition, and to protect domestic companies. On sovereignty and policy autonomy, some developed countries are pushing back against the constraint that international institution and agreement place on national sovereignty. This has manifested in movements like Brexit and criticism of organizations like the EU, WTO, IMF, and the World Bank. And if you look at the EU, certain countries there, for example, Hungary, has given a lot of independent thoughts on how the EU should be run. On social-cultural factors, the backlash against globalization is not solely economic. This is very important because globalization will impact society at large. They are also concerned about the perceived erosion of national identity and cultural values due to increased immigration and cultural exchange. Sometimes these sentiments are more perceived than rooted in reality. Anti-immigration sentiment has been widespread. While not directly related to economic globalization, increased migration flows have contributed to anti-globalization sentiment in some developed countries. This negative sentiment against foreigners manifests itself quite obviously in the US and in Europe. This sentiment becomes stronger if economic growth are weak and the distribution of wealth is not considered as fair. This particular point is extremely important to us, which I will touch a bit later. So what are the policy responses by the developed world? The most obvious is the institution of protectionist measures. Some developed countries have implemented more protectionist policies, including increased trade barriers, scrutiny of foreign investment, imposition of trade, or imposition of tariff. On industrial policy, there is a renewed focus on industrial policies by the developed world. Effort to strengthen domestic supply chain rather than relying on other countries, partly in response to vulnerabilities exposed during the COVID-19 pandemic, and partly to reduce dependence on the particular market. How about the developing world? What are the globalization issues faced by them? There are quite a number of challenges and risks from globalization and geopolitical events, which can significantly impact the economic growth, stability, and integration into global economy. One is trade and competition. Globalization has intensified competition for the developing world in the global market. While it offers opportunities for economic growth, many developing nations struggle to compete with the more advanced economies. The unstable political and economic system in these countries, coupled with a lack of economic diversification, hinder their ability to fully benefit from global trade. Income inequality. Globalization have a lot of benefit, but it can also exacerbate economic disparity within developing countries. Studies suggest that it may contribute to inequality between more educated and less educated members of society, potentially leading to declining wages for unskilled workers. And then there's the vulnerability to external shock. Developing economies are often more susceptible to external economic shock and political events. Financial stress in emerging economies can be intensified by geopolitical risks, especially when financial conditions are already unstable. So what are these geopolitical risks? One is political instability. Many developing countries, particularly in Africa and Latin America, face challenges related to unstable political system. This instability can deter foreign investment and hinder economic growth. Then there's many regional conflict, as you can read from the newspaper and media. Geopolitical events such as regional conflicts can have severe impact on developing economies. For instance, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the Middle East have led to disruption in globalized supply chain and increased inflationary pressure. As the developing countries become more integrated into the global digital economy, they face increased risks from state-sponsored cyber attack targeting vital infrastructure. And this threat is also common to all developed and developing world. So what are the social and environmental challenges arising from this globalization and geopolitical event? One is labor condition. While globalization has created job opportunities in developing countries, it has also raised concern about labor condition. For example, the garment industry in Bangladesh employ millions of people, but often under poor working condition and low wages. Brain drain into developed economy. I think this is touched on by the YABhg Mohammad, Menteri Besar Selangor. Globalization can lead to a brain drain effect, where skilled workers from developing countries migrate to more developed nations in search of better opportunities, potentially hampering local economic growth. As a better performing economies offer better wages and opportunities, the developing world are deprived of the much needed talent to develop their countries. Environmental concern, rapid industrialization and economic growth in developing countries can lead to environmental degradation. Extractive policies by the developed world cause numerous damage to the environment, not commensurate by the benefit accrued by the developing economies. Climate change in particular poses significant risk to this nation, potentially causing water scarcities, agriculture disruption, and social unrest. What are the financial and economic risks that we face arising of this globalization and geopolitical development? One is currency volatility. Developing economies are often more vulnerable to currency fluctuation and financial market instability caused by geopolitical events. For example, in 1998, the financial crisis has shown how contagious a crisis can spread if there is no circuit breaker within the system. Debt challenges. Many developing countries face challenges relating to sovereign debt, which can be exacerbated by global economic shock and geopolitical tension. And then many developing world, and Malaysia used to be one of them, rely heavily on commodity export, making them vulnerable to price fluctuation in the global market, which can influence by geopolitical events. Those economies with large domestic sectors, and Malaysia is increasingly making its domestic sector larger, will be isolated if the external factor comes into being. So, what is the impact on Malaysian trade, employment, and education? It's significant, with various factors contributing to country trade dynamics. Let's look at the trade performance and growth. Our performance has been robust with significant growth in recent years. For instance, from January to September 2024, Malaysia trade rose by 10.2% year-on-year, reaching 2.1 trillion ringgit. This growth mainly driven by export of palm oil-based agricultural products and electrical and electronic products. In July 2024 alone, Malaysia exported 131 billion worth of goods, marking a 12.3% increase from the previous year. Regional trade agreement, Malaysia has benefited largely from free trade agreements such as Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. These agreements have helped reduce tariff and liberalize investment rules, enhancing Malaysia's prospects. The RCEP, for example, is seen as stabilizing force amid global geopolitical tension, providing Malaysia with varied trading opportunities and reducing reliance on a single source. The increasing importance of BRICS and Malaysia's inclusion as a partner country is another opportunity for the country to expand its trade. But there are One particular area that we have to look for as we begin our trade diversification, I think we have done this for many years, and particularly driven by cheaper imports from China, we should worry about over-reliance on specific market and the potential impact of trade wars, sanction, tariff, and geopolitical tension, and impact on displacement of people who do not benefit from globalization. There's also a need to diversify the economy and move up the value chain to remain competitive. I will touch a bit on this when I look at the employment opportunities. One particular contemporary issue that is going on now is the trade tension between the United States and China. Malaysia could benefit from it if we can basically position ourselves as an attractive alternative for companies looking to diversify the supply chain. This could shift, increase foreign investment in Malaysia, with major companies like IT companies like Intel investing significantly in the countries. Malaysia's strategic location and political stability make it favorable destination for multinational corporations seeking to reduce their reliance on China or the US. The process of globalization, again I emphasize, is not without risk. It will expose the economy to a lot of vulnerabilities, in particular external shock, structural economic challenges, and some of the regulatory pressures. For example, economic slowdown in Malaysian economy could happen because we are totally dependent on open trade. If you look at our import and export, it's about 140% of GDP. That shows how open our economy is. So because of that, we are open to international economic fluctuation. For example, geopolitical tension and weak global demand have led to economic slowdown before, if you can recall, affecting sectors like electronics and energy. And there's always this geopolitical risk. Let me emphasize again, the tension between US and China is very significant. If it goes out of control, a lot of countries will be impacted by it. Even though Malaysia has benefited from trade diversion due to the US-China trade war, this tension also poses risk to us. The imposition of tariff can lead to decline in trade volume as countries shift toward self-sufficiency. This uncertainty can disrupt supply chain and impact Malaysia's export market. So the challenge for Malaysia is how to maintain the neutrality between US and China when involved this risk. For example, increased tariff on China's goods have led to shift in trade pattern with potential implication for Malaysia if it's perceived as favoring one side over the other. A few days ago, President-elect Trump have indicated that those who partner with BRICS, he would not hesitate to impose a 100% tariff. I hope it's rhetoric. It's not something that he will implement once he becomes the president. Now, let's look at our economic structure, the challenges to it. One, and this is very real, I hope you really understand this particular issue at hand, is our dependence on low-skilled labor. Malaysia's reliance on low-skilled foreign labor has been a double-edged sword. While it supports manufacturing growth, it also limits productivity improvement and wage growth. The country faces challenges in moving up the value chain due to competition from neighboring countries like Indonesia and Vietnam. We are no more competitive when it comes to wage anymore. Globalization has created new jobs in the sectors like technology, finance, and tourism. It has also attracted foreign companies to Malaysia, providing employment opportunities for skilled workers. So the key word is that we need to have skilled workers. There is also the fear of job losses in traditional industries due to automation and competition from cheaper labor market. There's also a concern about brain drain as skilled Malaysians seek opportunities abroad. The need to upscale the workforce and to attract talent in high growth sectors must be recognized. The brain drain is normally to the developed economies because they offer high wages. And this we can see on a daily basis down south when a lot of Malaysian goes to Singapore to seek better paying jobs. The low wage structure has contributed to a brain drain, with skilled workers seeking better opportunities abroad, which hampers the development of high-skilled workforce necessary for advancing in technology-intensive industries. Let me touch a bit on fiscal challenges, but I will not dwell too much on this. A budget deficit is an extremely important point that we as Malaysians need to look at. We have been in budget deficit since 1998. Despite effort to narrow it, Malaysia's budget deficit remained wider than pre-pandemic levels. The fiscal pressure limits the government's ability to invest in necessary infrastructure and social programs while maintaining economic stability. The thing about budget deficit is that if it's continuous, it will reach a point where we need to borrow to the extent that the borrowing will impact economic growth itself. That is particularly worrying if we reach that threshold. And on top of that, if we spend too much money paying the interest for borrowing, we don't have enough money for social infrastructure, hospitals, schools, universities, roads, ports, airport. So we will be actually disadvantaged by it. So the better the fiscal policy is being managed, the more space that we have, fiscal space we have if there's any crisis that may occur in future. I really like to discuss in greater detail on this issue, but the subject is so broad. Suffice to say is that Malaysia needs a value-added tax, or what I call a fair and equitable tax, or FET. Tax system that expand the tax base, that ensure that tax burden is spread across entire population, where everyone contribute to the tax system based on their consumption. It will also contribute significantly in the increase of government revenues. If we couple value-added tax with Fiscal Responsibility Act, it will instill discipline and responsibility into government spending. As you know, the act of government in spending and the act of individual spending is almost the same thing. Individual cannot spend more than they earn. Similarly, developing countries cannot spend more than they earn because it will reach a threshold where it will become a crisis. Let me touch a bit on BRICS and its strategic importance. Joining BRICS is an important strategic decision by Malaysia. That is very good. PMX have done this. It is something that we have no choice but to join this BRICS that will one day will become very, very big. Let me quickly run down the benefit of joining BRICS. One is access to larger market. Second, we will reduce reliance on traditional partners. Third, we will increase investment in BRIC members. BRIC members, some of them are very rich. If we have become a member, they might invest in Malaysia. And as a part of a larger trading bloc, we will have a stronger negotiating power when we negotiate trade deals and when we want to influence global economic governance. South-South cooperation, BRICS, as you know, emphasize a lot of benefit that can come out if South-South cooperation can be united in the way they maneuver the international policies. This could open up opportunities for Malaysia to collaborate with other developing nations, especially on technology transfer, infrastructure projects, and knowledge sharing. But of course, the challenges of BRIC membership is always there. One is competition. We will, of course, compete with members of BRIC. Second, trade diversification costs. Shifting towards BRIC may require adjustment, that's for sure, because we need to invest in a new market. Political consideration is something that is not easy to do, to balance our relationship between BRICS and Western economies. And then BRICS effectiveness. So far, the benefit of BRICS are basically conceptual in nature. The effectiveness of BRICS and economic bloc is yet to be proven, given the varying levels of economic development among members. They will definitely create a lot of internal disagreement, potentially limiting impact on widening of trade. BRICS, as you know, account for 40% of the world population and contribute significantly to global GDP growth. I think more than 75% of growth, world economic growth, come from BRICS nation and its partner countries. In 2023, BRICS accounted for 31% of global GDP, measured in purchasing power parity, compared to 30% for G7. So with the new partner economy coming in, BRICS will eventually constitute more than 50% of the global GDP. And I expect this continue into the future. So this particular development is significant because it shows there's a fundamental shift of global economic power towards emerging market, making BRICS an increasingly important trade partner. G7, the G20 will have no more power like they have before, and BRICS, with the consolidation of their members, will become even more influential than before. And joining BRICS will also further strengthen existing ties and create new opportunities with members like Brazil and South Africa, which we do not have much trade. There's one particular creature that was created by BRICS. It's called the New Development Bank, that provides funding for infrastructure and sustainable development projects. Malaysia could access to this New Development Bank to support infrastructure development, which in turn could facilitate trade by improving its logistics and connectivity. In fact, this New Development Bank have approved more than $30 billion in terms of loans for projects in member countries. So we do not have to rely on IMF and World Bank anymore. Not that Malaysia have borrowing with IMF or World Bank, but overall, developing countries have an alternative bank to borrow to manage the problem that they face. Let me touch on dependence on foreign labor and impact on employment. I mentioned this just now. Malaysia's dependence on foreign labor has become a significant economic issue with far-reaching implications. While foreign workers have played a crucial role in supporting Malaysia's economic growth, their presence has also created various challenges and costs for the country. If the dependence of foreign labor is not handled intelligently, it will have a severe adverse consequences, not only on the economy, but from the social aspect as well. Let's look at the economic impact of being overly dependent on foreign labor. There's no doubt, in short term, foreign workers have contributed positively to Malaysia's development and economy. They have filled labor shortages in key sectors such as manufacturing, construction, and plantation. Foreign workers have provided flexibility to the labor market, helping to moderate wage growth and ensure stable employment for local workers during economic cycles. They have helped sustain the profitability and competitiveness of industry that were losing the competitive advantage due to low wage floaters in other countries. But that are the benefit. But we must think about the long-term economic cost. The long-term economic cost of depending on foreign labor has created several economic distortions. These distortions are very, very expensive. These distortions are far more damaging to the long-term health of the economy than the reputed outward remittance of over 40 billion ringgit per annum. One is the productivity stagnation. The easy access to low-skilled workers has discouraged investment in technology and innovation. Industries with increased reliance on foreign workers are associated with lower investment in technology. Second, structural transformation challenges. The continued dependence on low-cost foreign labor may be slowing down Malaysia's transition towards becoming a high-income nation. In fact, Malaysia's graduation to high-income economy to a certain extent were caused by her reliance on low-cost model economy. Remittance outflow, foreign workers send a significant portion of their earnings back to their home countries, affecting Malaysia's balance of payment. And more importantly, there is no multiplier effect on the economy. And the outward remittance is considered as a leakage to the economy. Just imagine 40 billion ringgit flow out of the country. And if the multiplier effect is 5, that means we can create, out of that 40 billion, 200 billion worth of economic activities within the country, if it's maintained within the country. So that's how important it is. And then another, and the reason why a lot of people say that they don't have enough money, and given the higher, the increasing cost of living, is because of suppressed wages. While the overall impact on wages is debated, there is evidence that at least educated Malaysians face wage suppression due to competition from foreign workers. The B40 group bear the brunt of consequences. With rising cost of living and almost stagnant wages, this phenomenon ought to be a concern to policymakers. In fact, while I was at the central bank, we did a case study on the payment, on the wages and salaries of banking institution. And what we discovered actually take us back a bit. It seems that the bankers in Jakarta, of course in Singapore and Hong Kong, even in Jakarta and Bangkok, they are earning more than Malaysian bankers. So to a certain level, our wages have been suppressed. This is not good, because if the wages are suppressed, then we cannot become a high-wage nation. Then there's the stagnancy in creation of good-paying jobs. As businesses continue to depend on low-cost model as a tool for competitiveness, and as access to foreign workers is easy, they will remain rooted in low-value-added industries. The dependence on low-wage foreign workers is very addictive, very difficult to pry against, and will prevent the creation of good-paying jobs. If no drastic action is taken, we should expect the sizable number of unemployed graduates as we move forward, because there is no high-paying jobs, and the jobs that we created, the economy created, are mainly for foreign workers with no experience, with no skill. It's a real structural changes that we need to make a difference. And if we look at the sectoral dependency, the reliance on foreign workers varies across sectors. Manufacturing, over 750,000 foreign workers. Construction, 650,000 foreign workers. Services, more than 400,000. Plantation, more than 270,000. But if we look at some of the developed world, for example, Japan, South Korea, Australia, if you look at their construction industry, the dependence on foreign workers is almost nil. So why South Korea, Japan, and Australia can have a vibrant construction sector without those skilled workers from other nations, but Malaysia cannot do that? Why Malaysia is dependent on foreign workers to man our plantation, our construction industry, our manufacturing industry? something is quite wrong. Something is quite wrong somewhere in our policy making formulation. And then the social and policy implication of having dependence on foreign workers led to many social and policy challenges, increased social problems, including higher crime rates, and the spread of disease like malaria and cholera, because some of these foreign workers doesn't come from an economy that have high public health system. There's also the issue of stress on social infrastructure, such as hospital, healthcare, and education. But despite numerous pronouncements by officials aimed at reducing foreign labor dependence, the number of foreign workers keep on continuing, reaching over 2.3 million in 2024. I think it's much more than 2.3 million. This estimate might be higher if we include those without valid documentation or those who had overstayed. But the question that we need to ask is that, why the policy inertia? Why there's no follow-up? Why there's no implementation and enforcement? Then there's the skill mismatch. As Malaysia invests in education training for its citizens, there's a growing mismatch between skills of new labor market entrants and the low-skill jobs occupied by the foreign workers. So this issue might not impact you as a whole right now, this generation, but it will impact our children. And the future of our children will be in jeopardy. And we might say that a lot of domestic helpers and a lot of foreign workers come to Malaysia. So don't be surprised. In the future, a lot of our daughters and sons will go to those economies and become a source of cheap labor for them. And this problem is real. It might not look very real now, but if we don't make the necessary changes, 30 years from now, that situation will occur. So what are the future outlook for employment in Malaysia? The problem and challenges that I pointed out earlier on dependence of foreign labor are severe. It poses a present and future risk to Malaysia. The country requires a blueprint on foreign labor desperately. Not today, it should be yesterday. Not only to manage the economic challenges, but prevent the potential social-related issues, including riots and social upheaval that we had witnessed in America and Western Europe. A clearly designed system on gradual reduction of foreign labor dependence should also assist businesses to navigate the transitional phase effectively. The blueprint should cover at least the following areas: accelerate economic transformation, invest in technology, target foreign labor policies, and of course, the skill development for our own people. While reform of foreign workers' policies are necessary for Malaysia's long-term benefit, they will undoubtedly result in short-term economic adjustment. It will be painful because we are so addictive on cheap labor that if we were to turn, it will be very, very painful. But the painful adjustment is necessary for the good of our children. The case for Malaysia to reduce dependence on foreign labor is very strong. Failure to institute labor reform or delay its implementation would cause long-term unimaginable damage to the economy and to the social cohesion of our society. So that's one area of which I thought is a bit controversial, but think about it. And then I'm going to enter into an area which is even more controversial, of education system and reform. This issue on education will relate to all of us, a very touchy subject, no doubt. But it is something that we need to confront and accept. There are positive impact and challenges when it comes to the impact of globalization. Because we have seen it had led to greater access to international education and exchange program. Malaysian universities are increasingly collaborating with foreign institutions. There is a growing emphasis on English language skills and the global perspective in the formulation of our curriculum. However, they are concerned about the affordability of quality education, particularly for marginalized communities, for the B40. The need to ensure equitable access to education and address the digital divide is crucial. There's also a need to adapt to the education system to meet the demand of a rapidly changing global economy. Let us look at the quality of Malaysian education as reflected in global indices and assessment. It will reveal a mixed picture with both challenges and areas of improvement. One thing that we have done very well since independence is that every year our budget for education is one of the highest. And that is not true for many countries, but Malaysia has made the right choice. But there are some challenges that we need to look at. And what best to look at whether what you are doing is effective, whether the result is good. First, we look at the PISA ranking. Malaysia's performance in the Program for International Student Assessment, or better known as PISA, has been a cause for concern. In the latest PISA ranking, Malaysia was placed 51 out of 81 countries, indicating a decline in educational standards compared to previous years. These are external indices. The country's scores in mathematics, science, and reading has fallen, placing it behind even, if you are behind South Korea, Japan, or Singapore, it's something to be expected because they've been very aggressive in really looking at their education system. But we are even behind Vietnam. If you look at the World University ranking, some Malaysian universities have performed well, no doubt, in global university ranking. For instance, some of the universities have been in the top 200 in the Times Higher Education World Ranking, which is a good news for us. But it's not widespread. It's in patches. But this ranking of some of the good universities that we have basically reflect the individual universities. It doesn't reflect the entire quality of our education system. And if you look at public perception and report, for example, Ipsos report, according to that report, 40% of Malaysians rate their education system as good, which is higher than the global average of 33%. Despite this relatively positive perception, significant concern remain about unequal access to education, outdated curricula, and political or ideological biases that affect educational quality. And the World Bank report highlighted challenges such as excessive political interference and a centralized education system that limits local autonomy. These factors contribute to a complex educational landscape with a vernacular national Islamic school that spread our resources thinly. So what are the challenges and what are the things that we need to improve? One is curriculum and language policy. The shift from English to Malay as the medium of instruction has affected English proficiency level among students. There's an ongoing debate about implementing bilingual education system that includes multiple languages to better prepare students for a globalized world. I mentioned just now, our economy is over 140% of our GDP, our import and export. We are such an open economy that we are basically dependent on outside world to improve our livelihood. But if our command of the languages become weak, we cannot trade with other people. We cannot continuing to argue whether it's Malay or English. It has to be Malay, English plus Mandarin or Arabic. China will become the biggest economy in the world in 2035. Even now, they almost surpass US in terms of purchasing power parity. And yet, we are still arguing about whether it should be English. We should be arguing about a third language. Should it be Mandarin or should it be Arabic or French or Spanish? We need to make this transition. We should not be overly sensitive about language. It used to be Latin, the knowledge of knowledge, and then English took over, and then Arabic took over as a source of knowledge. Then the Western world developed. English become the lingua franca for knowledge, language of knowledge. Now, as we move forward, the lingua franca for knowledge will be likely Mandarin. And as it is, China have surpassed the European countries in terms of coming up with new researchers. The Chinese have more research output than many other countries. It's all in Mandarin. Just imagine if our people, our children, know how to speak Mandarin as good as we speak English. We have access to the world's biggest economy and also access to their technology and knowledge as well. So this sensitivity about language, I think we need to extradite from our mentality. And then very importantly, we need to make sure that our graduates, the only measurement whether we have a good education system is whether our graduate can get a job outside of Malaysia. Not as a job with low skill like in Singapore, but good paying jobs. For example, in Cambodia, a lot of CEOs and Chief Risk Officer and Chief Financial Officer are from Malaysia, simply because they have the education, the experience. We need to come up with that type of syllabus. And then the political and religious influence. This one I'm treading into a very controversial area. But since this is a debate, I will say it out because I want to provoke your thinking on this. The rise of religious influence in school has led to increased focus on Islamic studies at the expense of other subjects. You may agree, you may not disagree. But because it's a Shah Alam economic debate, I will say that out. And the reason why I raise this is because there's a concern about the ability of the education system to produce well-rounded individuals capable of competing globally. Remember, our trade, more than 140% of our GDP. We are basically dependent on the outside world to improve our livelihood. Of course, there's the learning gap post-pandemic, which I thought it can be resolved quite easily. Overall, there is no doubt that individual successes within Malaysia, higher education sector and strong performance in the global ranking, the broader education system faces significant challenges. These include declining international assessment scores, political interference and inadequate language policies. Addressing these issues is crucial for us, crucial for our children to improve their educational outcome and maintain competitiveness on the global scale. On the global scale, we used to be, I think, the top 10 most competitive. Now we are about 30, I think. So we have lost our competitiveness. So what do we need to do about the education system in Malaysia? What we need is a revolution. It's not transformation, it's not a piecemeal changes. We need a revolution in our education system. Several key structural reforms should be instituted and should be done and should not be done in piecemeal basis. One, decentralized decision-making in education. The current centralized education system in Malaysia has been identified as a major obstacle to progress. The existing education system and structure has failed the general public, proven by the external indices, as evident by many international rankings, many indexes relating to education. Decentralized centralized education system breeds complacency, hinder innovation, hinder competition, and promote mediocrity across the system. That the states, the parent, teachers manage the education system. They should know what need to be taught. They should know what is good for the children. Implementing a decentralized system will allow for more autonomy for local schools and teachers to make decisions based on specific student needs. It enables faster and more dynamic responses to educational challenges. Also empower principals and parents to manage school in their respective areas. This is quite revolutionary in aspect What I'm saying is that change the education system that have served us well before, but I don't think will serve us well as we move forward. Curriculum reform requires significant changes, reduce the compactness and difficulty of the curriculum to prevent students subject in promoting the knowledge of global events, especially in the area of technology, economics, and finance. Teaching history that enable understanding, critical thinking, and to foster a more inclusive understanding of our country. Strengthen STEM education to address the declining interest in pure sciences and subjects related to Industry 4.0 and the digital economy. Introduce into education curriculum the skills of critical thinking and acquisition of knowledge. We need to support our teachers. We need to give them continuous education and support. We need to allocate more budget to our teachers. And then again, language policy. Addressing the language issue is vital for improving educational outcome. Depoliticize on the use of language in education. The world has changed, and we need to change with it. Enshrine the triple language program +1 in the education curriculum. Teach our kids to speak multiple languages at an early stage. If you travel, if you look at some of the smaller Western economy like Luxembourg, Switzerland, Belgium, they speak 4 or 5 languages. Never an issue with their domestic language. So they don't have any qualm learning new languages. We must ensure our students, our children, to be proficient in multiple languages. Malay, English, like I mentioned just now, Mandarin and Arabic. But I thought for Malaysia, we must be conversant in Malay, in English, in Mandarin, and Arabic, and in Arabic. Given the fundamental changes taking place around the globe, where China will become the world's largest economy and the sources of cutting-edge technological and advancement research, actually it's no choice for us. And Malaysia cannot ill afford to miss this trend. Let me go to the final topic, Selangor specific suggestion. I have 3 suggestions for the state of Selangor. And I think some of them have been mentioned by Dato Menteri Besar. One is the creation of a Selangor Statistical Bureau, the establishment of Selangor Economic Advisory Council, and the Selangor State Sovereign Fund. Let me go through into detail of each idea. Selangor Statistical Bureau. There are several compelling reasons why Selangor, as Malaysia's most economically significant state, would benefit immensely from a dedicated statistical bureau. One, we need a granular data for targeted policies. We need to know what are the problems. Selangor have a unique economic structure, very diverse and dynamic economy, with strength in manufacturing, services, agriculture and tourism. A dedicated bureau can collect granular data specific to Selangor economic landscape, enabling more targeted and effective policies. But of course, we will have, with data, we can basically face many unique challenges unique to the state. For example, urbanization, infrastructure development, environmental sustainability and social inclusion. A Selangor specific bureau can provide data to address these local challenges more effectively. For example, detailed data on employment trends in specific districts within Selangor can inform targeted skill training program and job creation initiative in those areas. And then the thing about data is that we can actually respond very quickly to local needs. For example, rapid changes to Selangor economy and demographic are constantly evolving. A local statistical bureau can be more agile in responding to these challenges, providing timely data to support quick policy. And then, because Selangor is a state, so the proximity to stakeholders, This bureau can be closer to local stakeholders, including businesses, communities, and government agencies, enabling better collaboration and faster data dissemination. For example, in the event of a localized economic downturn or natural disaster, a dedicated bureau can quickly gather data to assess the impact and inform relief effort. At the same time, the state data can complement national data. The issue with national data is that it is more macro in perspective. So we can, if Selangor have a statistical bureau, it can have a sub-national perspective. The info will be even more accurate. Of course, with better data, we can have data transparency and accessibility with focus on local domestic economy. When we make decisions, it will be data-driven. And most importantly, I think, if we have a statistical data, we can strengthen Selangor competitiveness. We can be the #1 state in the federation. We can attract investment. And when we plan based on evidence. For example, data on Selangor skilled workforce, infrastructure development, and ease of doing business can be used to attract foreign direct investment and promote economic growth. One thing that I have learned, I used to be the chairman of YABhg Official Committee. This is the committee organized by the Central Bank of Central Bank, which is called Bank for International Settlement. When I was the chairman, we organized a yearly workshop on, it's about 30 or 40 people that will attend that yearly workshop. So the first workshop, I was actually shocked. The person who attended the workshop, the person who attended the workshop were not head of statistics, but the governors themselves. The governor themselves attended the workshop. Then it dawned upon me why the developed economy are developed. Because when they make decision, when they make policy, they base it on data. And statistics is one source of data for them to think, for them to plan, for them to monitor whether their policies are effective or not. This is an eye-opener for me. Obviously, it's a wake-up call for me to finish the speech quickly. I have 2 more points. One is establish a Selangor Economic Advisory Council. It's similar to the one in the US. And the thing about Selangor is that Selangor is the birthplace of many millionaires, many billionaires. People are conversant in businesses. Why not we just ask them to become advisors? We don't need to pay them. We just ask them to be a member of the Economic Council, and they will basically help us on this. Why? Because the council can tailor economic strategies. They can come up with proactive policy recommendation. The advice are expert in nature. They give independent advice. And then because the council can also enhance coordination and collaboration, it will strengthen investors' confidence because they know Selangor economic advisors are people of stature. So this is very important. And Selangor have a lot of privileges that other state doesn't have. And one of them is the source for advice. Then there is the issue of Selangor State Sovereign Fund. Selangor, as we know, is the leading economic engine in Malaysia. There are many compelling reasons to establish a sovereign fund. One, we can maximize return on the state asset. Then long-term growth. For example, the fund can invest in renewable energy project. technology startup, infrastructure development within Selangor, generating both financial return and contributing to the state growth. Then there's always the funding strategy development initiative, especially for infrastructure, economic diversification, because if you have a fund, we can do a lot of things with it. Enhancing financial resilience, Selangor basically run their finances quite well. But we need a stabilization fund. Because as you know, economy always faced with counter-cyclical economic cycle. So if we have that fund, we can use it to stabilize economic growth in Selangor. Then of course, our children will enjoy. We need to promote this as intergenerational fund equity. And then because we have this, most likely foreign investor will conclude that Selangor, being the leading state, is also managing their finances quite independently and quite prudently. So that can attract a lot of foreign investment. I think my boss say you should stop now, not later. Thank you very much.
Mohon yang amat dihormati Tan Sri Pro Chancellor untuk terus kekal berada di atas pentas. Majlis dengan ini mempersilakan Yang Amat Berhormat Dato Seri Amirudin Shari, Datuk Menteri Besar Selangor, diiringi oleh Yang Berbahagia Profesor Emeritus Dato Dr. Mohammad Redzuan bin Othman, Presiden dan Canselor Unisel ke pentas bagi menyampaikan jutaan terima kasih kepada semua yang hadir dan terlibat sama bagi menjayakan acara pada hari ini. Saya Muhammad Alafi Abdul Rahman bagi pihak penganjur memohon mengundur diri dan dijemput kepada Yang Berhormat Datuk Menteri Besar serta Divisi Kehormat ke sesi sidang media yang telah disediakan dan kemudian